Hey folks, I'm Dr. Joe. This is the January 2025 update. And this month, I want to talk about self-driving cars or autonomous cars and give you some of my thoughts as to where we're at and just some of my personal experiences. So always again, starting with a big idea, I believe we've reached a pivotal moment in autonomous car technology, signaling that its widespread adoption is arriving faster than anticipated. Now, I don't know how soon you were anticipating this happening. I know that various folks like Elon Musk have been saying that this was going to happen for many, many years. I think over time, some people took that seriously, some people did not. But I will say that for myself, I wasn't taking any of that necessarily seriously until recently. And why is that? Well, recently I had a bunch of my friends that are kind of in the tech, or not kind of, they are in the tech industry, and they mentioned to me, hey man, the most recent software update and hardware update for Teslas and their full self-driving are game-changing. And again, they're not saying that it's super safe or whatnot. And by the way, I'm not trying to be anti-Tesla or anything like that. I just want to be as transparent as possible about the realities of these technologies. But with that said, I was actually looking to get a new car at the end of 2024 and ended up deciding that, you know what, I'm going to pick up a Tesla with full self-driving and see how it goes. And so as I took it out for multiple rides and used the technology, folks, I mean, we're not 100% there yet, but we are so much closer, and I don't know. I don't think it's like 5 to 10 years away. I think it's years away, maybe a year away. Maybe, I mean, probably not months, but we are so close. So for this update, I wanted to go through three things. First is, how does autonomous driving work? Secondly, what are some of the major players, or who are some of the major players? And third, what has been my experience thus far? So first, how does autonomous driving work? I'm not going to explain intricate details of the technology. I'm just going to explain things that I think are really important for everybody to know, especially as we potentially move into a autonomous driving future. So first, autonomous cars or self-driving cars, they use sensors to perceive the environment. Now that obviously makes sense. So these sensors collect data about the surroundings, such as roads, vehicles, pedestrians, obstacles, using a variety of external inputs. And these sensors are really important, and they are diverse in their capabilities and the types of sensors. So one thing that I think we should all be thinking about is it really matters what type of sensors are on these vehicles. At least for this initial phase, and I'll explain what I mean by that, because later phases, maybe it won't be as important to have different types of sensors. But again, by the way, I'm not an expert in self-driving cars. I just have a bit of knowledge in AI and machine learning and these things, so I understand the overall mathematics of these things. So, having diverse sensors. So you want to use multiple sensor types if possible. For example, cameras, radar, and LiDAR, which I think is light. Well, it's like a laser using light to bounce off of things. So these are multiple sensor types, which enhances safety by providing redundancy and compensating for limitations of individual sensors. So I'm just going to go over three different sensor types, and I am not a expert on sensors, but again, I think these are things that we all can understand, at least what I'm going to go through, and you'll kind of get an idea of why each one has its pros and cons. So first, just cameras. We know what cameras are. These are probably the lowest cost of all the sensors because cameras are much more readily available. The technology's been around for a while, and it also mimics how we drive. Because we primarily use our vision. We use other senses, but we primarily use our vision as our means of perception when we're driving. And so these cameras are similar, where they are excellent at object detection, just like hopefully we are all pretty excellent at object detection when we're driving. They are good at low to mid-range distance, actually very similar to us. We can't see super far, but we can see close and mid-range. But just like us, it struggles in poor lighting as well as poor weather. One of the big things with poor weather is that cameras, if they get covered, right now in Pittsburgh, it's winter and we're getting a ton of snow, which means we're getting a ton of salt. And so for my Tesla, the sensors keep getting covered with salt, and then that degrades the ability for the cameras to be able to see. So that's a problem. Then you have radar, which is not it's not visual, a little bit more expensive. It uses radio waves. Radio waves are nice because it can kind of penetrate through things, even with regards to bad weather. So it works well in all weather conditions in general. It's got a much better ability to do long range detection because radio waves can travel actually incredible distances. Again, I'm not an expert, but radio waves can go outer space distance, right? So they are very long range, but they have limited resolution for object detection. So it's not very precise with regards to object detection like visual cameras are. And then they're also susceptible to radar interference. I'm not necessarily saying that there's enemies or something like that trying to interfere with your self-driving car, but rather there's so much radio waves around us that radio waves can interfere with other radio waves. So clearly radar has its benefits, but it also has its deficiencies. And then third, LiDAR, which I apologize, the exact acronym escapes me, but it's essentially light pulses. And I'm not an expert in LiDAR, but basically laser light pulses where it's very expensive. At least currently, maybe it'll be driven down in the future, but right now extremely expensive. But this is extremely high resolution environment and object detection because you have all these, just crazy, extremely fast and precise light pulses that can draw a picture of the exact environment. Not great at long range, but good at low to mid range, kind of like the visual camera system, but also struggles in poor weather. So similar to cameras, but struggles in a different way. Well, I guess in a similar way. Light is not able to travel back and forth in poor weather conditions as well. Additionally, I mentioned it's very expensive. It's also very power hungry. So especially if you're having a self-driving car that's powered by battery, LiDAR is pretty rough on the battery because it just needs a ton of power. So you see the pros and cons of these sensors, and so you would think to yourself, hey, I think it'd be a good idea to have a combination of a number of these sensors together, or all three. There's other types of sensors out there. I'm just identifying the biggest three right now. But these sensors and other sensors are the way that self-driving cars, autonomous cars, are able to see and to understand and perceive the environment so that it can drive. So then, once it can see everything or perceive everything, these autonomous driving cars use aggregate historical data to perform driving now. What that means is it has to be trained on previous driving from a lot of previous data for it to make best decisions now. And so sensor data is processed instantly to predict future movements of objects and the potential evolution of the environment. So basically what it's saying is the sensors sense what's going on, and then it's using all this past data and the algorithms that have been created from that data to predict what should you do right now and how should you react in the environment and how is the environment potentially going to react back to you. So it's using all of that historical data to make decisions on the sensor data that's coming in. And so based on the predictions of what it thinks the environment's going to do, other cars are going to do these things, the system plans actions like steering, accelerating, or braking to navigate the vehicle safely and efficiently. Okay? Now, early systems, when autonomous driving was first being developed, they could and they will and they did struggle with edge cases, right? Because it's easy to get a lot of examples of a stop sign and stopping and going, but rare or unexpected situations like a rabbit jumping in front of the car or something like that. These things were not in the original data sets, at least in the beginning. And so when they did happen due to insufficient data, this could lead to the car the car is driving at this point. So it just may not know what to do, or I don't know, obviously like some kind of kid running into the road or something like that. this was really, really dangerous. And this gives you an idea that it's really important to allow these systems to have a lot of experience and a lot of data to be able to see as much as possible so that it can make correct judgments from previous data. And so these systems will get better over time, but in the beginning phases, they were pretty bad and pretty dangerous, not because the concept of the engineering was bad, it was just that they didn't have enough data to make the best decisions. It's kind of like a baby, like a baby driving versus, or not a baby, I guess they don't even have any concept of how to do anything, but a preteen driving versus somebody that has had many years trucking, that has so many different experiences. And then autonomous systems, they rely on feedback loops, gathering data from real world scenarios, also user interactions. So again, over time, as you're in a self-driving car, for example, you are going to interact just like with my Tesla. Sometimes even though it's self-driving, I'll take the wheel and I'll cancel self-driving, and it'll ask me, why did you cancel? And I interact and give it data saying, well, this is what happened. And then what happens? Tesla's algorithms learn from that and they become better and better. So in this point, it says crowdsource and share data help refine performance. We're going to be in that period for a while where more and more data is going to be collected, more feedback from users is going to be collected. I mean, this is kind of how algorithms work, for better or for worse, where we are kind of part of the product and the process to help build a lot of these models. And so this is generally how the process of self-driving via sensing the environment, making decisions, using past data to do the driving now, and then using currently collected data to make that whole loop better and to make the intelligence better. That's how autonomous driving works. I just want to throw out this idea here, is that these are not just cars anymore. I mean, I grew up, I think my first car was a Volvo 240 DL that basically stopped at every single stoplight. The engine would just die because it was a junky car. But now, as we're moving into the future, these are not just cars. These are computers that drive themselves. They are so complicated in their computing, and they will only get more complicated in their computing because at the end of the day, they're computers with wheels. A funny story that I'll tell you is that when I went to the Tesla dealership in Pittsburgh, there's a big one near my house, and I was speaking with one of the people on the floor. I think he's a salesperson. I don't exactly know the types of roles because Tesla's pretty different in how they do buying of cars. But what I found out was, as I got to know him, he works a full-time job as an IT guy, right? And so I was like, okay, so then what are you doing here? And he said he just loves the technology so much. I mean, he's a tech guy. And so he just works part-time at the Tesla dealership, even though I don't think he's doing it for the money. He just loves the technology. And I just thought that was so funny because, these aren't cars or just cars anymore. These are computers, and you see a lot of tech people that are kind of getting more and more into maybe cars because the cars are becoming more and more computers. It's a very interesting phenomena. All right, so that's how autonomous driving works. So who are some of the major players? I'm only going to talk about 3. There's many others. For example, there's a lot of progression in China and Chinese company for self-driving, but I'm not going to go over that. There's other, players that are smaller, but I'm just going to go through 3 that are pretty major. Waymo is probably the biggest one right now, and they're focused on robo-taxis, right? And right now, they've actually successfully deployed these robo-taxis. I'm sure you've heard about them in Phoenix, San Francisco, and Los Angeles. Now, I want to think about those 3 cities: Phoenix, San Francisco, Los Angeles. A lot of sun. Rarely is there bad weather. San Francisco maybe more than the other 2, although I think I spelled Phoenix wrong. And Los Angeles actually, recently the fires. I mean, obviously terrible situation, but the overall just general historical environment is there isn't as much inclement weather in these cities, and that makes a big difference if you think about the sensors that we talked about. Waymo has over 20 million miles driven. So they're the real deal. And again, this is part of what I'm talking about when I say that self-driving cars are here, and they're still working themselves out. But Waymo has shown a huge track record with regards to safety. And I haven't recently taken any of these, but I have a lot of friends that take these all the time now, and they say it's different. Some of them like it better than Uber's. Others, are kind of ambivalent, but it's definitely here. And Waymos use a combination of cameras, radar, and LiDAR. By the way, again, remember LiDAR is very expensive, and radar is a little bit more expensive than cameras. So it's reported that these Waymo cars right now, they cost north of and above $200,000 a car. And I think that's just cost. So you can imagine, and a lot of this is the sensors. The LiDAR systems are just very, very expensive. So, but it's safer because they've got so many sensors. Now they've got upcoming tests in 2025 in Miami, followed by Austin and Atlanta. This is going to be very important because think about Miami. They have a lot of rain. Now they don't deal with snow. Snow is going to be a big problem, and salt and these kind of things for these self-driving cars with the sensors. But Miami, you have, massive rain. And then Atlanta, you also have rain and maybe a little bit of issue with ice and snow. But you can understand why they're rolling out to these cities in this order, right? At some point, like Minnesota or something like that. That's going to be an interesting test. And they want to make sure, I think, as a company, that they roll out to increasingly difficult cities when it comes to weather and environments, so that they can make sure that things are safe. That's just my take. I don't work for Waymo, or I don't think I've ever talked to anybody that works at Waymo. So that's just kind of my take, looking at how they're doing the technology and the rollout. Aurora, I'm not going to go too much into this, but I met some of the leadership of Aurora recently at a conference, super cool people, and they focus on autonomous trucks. So you probably haven't heard of, nor will you really hear of Aurora unless you're in the trucking industry, because they're not doing taxis, and they're not doing self-driving cars for individuals. They're looking at trucks, and most of their testing and development right now is in Texas and Montana. I think I recently heard they built out I might be totally getting this wrong, like a 78,000 acre testing facility in Montana. That could be wrong. Is that even possible to be that big? I don't know. Anyways, I could be wrong, but I know that they're testing in Texas and Montana. I think they're in other cities too. I think they're in Pittsburgh too. So again, maybe other places. I do not believe that anything is in production deployed like Waymo is. I think it's still in development and testing. But they also use cameras, radar, and they use something called First Light LiDAR, which is a proprietary LiDAR that they develop themselves, which is pretty cool. And they're really, they're focused on safety, especially because of the leadership that I met. I think that was one of the biggest things was they just 100% were most concerned about safety of human lives. And so I appreciated that, obviously. And then the last one I'll go over is Tesla. This is self-driving for owners, so people like me that just recently got a full self-driving Tesla. Now, what's really interesting is it's basically deployed, right? Even though it's kind of in forever beta, it's deployed everywhere as long as you have the recent enough car hardware. So you have to have a recent model that has a certain computer in the car that is of a certain level of hardware. And then you also need the most recent software upgrade or update that includes full self-driving. And then you have to purchase the full self-driving capability for that hardware and that software that you can purchase it month to month or for the lifetime of the car. But it's live and it's going right now. I have it right now, and it's pretty nuts. Now, here's where Tesla is majorly differentiated, and I don't know if that's a good thing. Their sensors are camera only. I recently read the Elon Musk Isaacson book, bio, and besides being a just insane book, I mean, you learn a lot about Elon Musk through that book. But one of the things is he seems to always go back when it comes to technology to first principles, and he's suggesting that if humans only use sight, which I think we use more than sight actually because of the way that our senses work. But if humans use sight primarily for driving, then autonomous vehicles should use sight only for driving. Again, I don't know if I fully agree with that. I'm not trying to disrespect him or Tesla, and I have a Tesla, but I'm just trying to suggest that it's not necessarily, you can't say it's the safest. I don't think you can say it's the safest when it comes to a sensor stack consideration. So Tesla gets a lot of negativity, especially from experts that are researching self-driving cars and really know self-driving technology, that they feel that camera sensors only are irresponsible. Now, why do I have one? Well, one is I'm just testing out the technology. Second, I still have respect for Elon and Tesla and what they're doing. But third, I also understand the technology and the limitations, and so I think I can be fairly responsible with regards to how I use the technology. And so for me, it's still pretty cool. But I want to clearly point this out, that they only use cameras. I think their older models had some radar, but they took it out. Now, they're not taking it out, as far as I know, just to make it unsafe. It's because of cost. Just think about the Waymo situation and $200,000 plus for just the cost of the car to have LiDAR. So you'd be buying a Model Y for $300,000+ if it had LiDAR. So that's one of the issues with regards to sensors. Now, a positive thing about Teslas is that they can use camera data. They put front-facing cameras first, I believe, in 2014 with their Model S, and they've been collecting that data since then. I think you have to opt out. Actually, this I don't know at all, but I'm assuming that you have to opt out of sending camera data to Tesla if you have a Tesla. So essentially, like, who even does that if you were required to opt out? Because how do you even know how to opt out with this stuff? So all that camera data has been piling up over 10 plus years. And so that actually, if you think about it from the algorithmic standpoint, that makes their algorithms a lot more robust and, quote unquote, safe on the algorithmic side, although just having a camera is an issue. And then additionally, in the ecosystem of Elon Musk controlled companies, he also has Starlink, which connects to, it has data for GPS and has internet data, which all can help Teslas perform better when it comes to full self-driving. Now, this is all trade secret, so I don't know if they're using those components to help their algorithms, but I would imagine they are, because why would they not from a AI and data standpoint? So just want you to understand that there is a big benefit with regards to Elon having all these other companies when it comes to the data that can help with regards to autonomous driving, which then also vice versa will help with other things like space travel and these kind of things. It's kind of insane how it all connects. So finally, what has been my experience thus far? I don't want to prolong this explanation, but it's been magical. Again, I'm not this Tesla fanboy. I'm not this Elon fanboy. But again, I have respect for, hopefully for most, if not all people. I just have to say that being in the self-driving Tesla, it is insane. It makes mistakes, and I'm always ready for those mistakes because I understand that a camera-only system, and then understanding a bit about AI, I know the moments where I probably shouldn't use or I don't use the technology, or I should be watching very carefully. But for the most part, it has been an insane experience. And these things, they go from being parked to, if they don't park for you at the end, well, actually they do, but you've got to say auto park, and then it'll park for you. Additionally, they've got auto summon, where, the other day I was at the gym and it's frigid right now in Pittsburgh. And so I didn't want to run back to my car because it was parked kind of far. And so I did an auto summon, and the car just came and picked me up. And I just got in the car. And I think a few people were freaked out because they didn't know what was going on. But it is insane. And it just makes me think, man, we are not far off from self-driving cars being much more of a reality for us all. So I just want to say it's been pretty magical for me. So the big idea for this January 2025 update is that I believe we've reached a pivotal moment in autonomous car technology, signaling that its widespread adoption is arriving faster than anticipated. And I want to close with kind of two thoughts. First is autonomous trucking, which I want to just say one more time. At least the folks that I met at Aurora, I mean, just really quality people. So this is in no negative. This is no way negative towards them. But when I think about autonomous driving trucks or robotaxis, I mean, what happens to Uber gig workers, or what happens to truck drivers? I mean, truck driving has been around way longer than Uber driving, but taxi driving even. What happens to that? Again, this is the stuff that we need to be taking way more seriously than just the technology itself. And I feel like we talk so much more about the technology than these issues. And so these are things that I talk about, especially within the city of Pittsburgh and the surrounding communities here. But I think we need to continue to push this consideration. And those of you that are influential or experts in policy or government or just public outreach, I would exhort you to help publicize and to think about these kind of issues. But I do want to close with one story that was just really heartwarming for myself. So recently my dad was visiting Pittsburgh, and my dad and I really love Duolingo for various reasons. It's such a cool app, cool company, cool leaders, really, really great people there. I know people that work there, and some of them are in leadership, and just great company, headquartered in Pittsburgh. And so my dad wanted to go to lunch, and I picked up my Tesla, and I said, "Hey, Dad," and kind of in Korean, but hey, Duolingo has a taqueria. They actually have a taqueria. I heard the story that one of the founders of Duolingo just really likes Mexican food, and so opened a literal Mexican restaurant taqueria owned by Duolingo that's at the headquarters. But it's open to the public. So I told my dad, let's go and eat at this restaurant, which by the way has excellent food. Okay. So we got in the car and I put in the address of the taqueria, and then I just said drive, or I pulled down full self-drive, and it drove us there. And my dad was just mesmerized. He's older. He's kind of losing his ability to, fully drive himself. And it was during that drive that he told me, for the first time, I never even heard of this. He told me about how when he was growing up as a kid in Korea, it was post-Korean War, and all of them, him and his friends, they're all living on the streets. I mean, so poor, where he was telling me for the first time that the way that they survived was they would largely eat tree roots. So you can't eat the bark, but if you dig under the ground of a tree, there's like a white kind of fleshy and more watery part of tree roots, and then you can actually eat those, and that's how many of them survived post-war. And then the United States GIs that were out there would give them rations sometimes and jobs and stuff like that. They'd pay these kids in food if they would help them. And this is not in any way negative towards the U.S. Army. It was actually he has very fond memories of these military folks helping him and his friends. And he was telling me the story, and then, which was for me pretty heartwarming in itself. But then he was talking about how now we're in a self-driving car. And he couldn't even imagine, from then to now. And I really reflected on that and thought to myself, we're going into a totally different age with technology. And it's not all rosy. I'm not one person that's saying that, hey, we should just all be only excited, because there's a lot of concerns, like this whole trucking concern, right, with truck drivers. But it is something that is just tremendously different when it comes to maybe an era of human history that we're going into. Because things that we thought were just wildly impossible in the past. I remember the Jetsons. I don't know if some of you that are older, I remember watching those cartoons. We're going into this age where self-driving may become our very soon reality. And then even, I don't know if you saw from Consumer Electronics Show, I mean, flying cars, that sounds crazy, but it may not be too crazy in the near future. And so I think we all need to really start taking this much more seriously. And hopefully this update helps you get kind of ramped up on thinking about the AI around self-driving cars. Please always remember, you can get more AI insights at bluefoxinsights.ai, a site that myself and others have put together and will continue to grow. But I just want to thank you again. I'm Dr. Joe. This is my January 2025 update. Hopefully this wasn't too long, but also hopefully it helped you to get a little bit better idea on self-driving autonomous car technology. And hopefully you can level up in your AI knowledge as we try to bring insights to support Team Human, because we're all on the same team together. We all need to help each other. Thank you so much.